those types of leadership traits really allow for not only you as a person to step up into being a great leader, but it allows for your team to build their resilience because of the way you're leading.
Hey everybody, my name is Andrew Tran. I'm a marketing branding strategist. I help organizations, their teams, their team leaders deliver and execute on the challenges they're facing, from marketing campaigns to market entry activity, all the way through to strategy and planning. If you want to hit me up, check out my website. It's www.andrewtran.asia. You can find out a little bit more about me. You can book time with me. But until then, let's get on with the show. My next guest today is Heidi Dening. She is a speaker, author, educator from Sydney, Australia. She's had over 21 years of experience empowering thousands of individuals, teams, and organizations improve their workplace resilience, their leadership resilience, and their professional resilience. Our conversation takes us into her career in education development. We also talk about what makes people resilient and why it's also important to build resilience. We also explore how to create resilience and also adopt behaviors that will create change, both from a professional point of view and from a personal point of view. So without further ado, give it up for Heidi Dening.
Heidi, how you going?
Hello. I'm great, Andrew. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you for asking me.
No problems. So first and foremost, I know today's theme, so if anyone is just watching or listening at home, that today's theme is about resilience. But before we kind of jump into the big kind of nooks and crannies behind it, I want everyone who's watching and listening to kind of know a little bit about you. And you know, you as a educator, as a speaker, like, how did you get into that in the first place?
Well, I suppose it goes right back to the first part of my career which I began as a high school teacher. And I think when you are standing in front of hormonal cocktail teenage girls and you have 30 for an hour, and then you've got another 30 for an hour, and then you've got another 30 for an hour, if you do not learn to kind of own the space and have some kind of presence in the room, your life soon becomes a very big nightmare, let me tell you. And that was a lesson I learned very quickly. And it's interesting, I didn't know it at the time, of course, but on reflection, when I think about just having confidence to speak in front of, you know, big stages now, or smaller workplace groups, and of course now in our new world, virtual webinars, doing it that way, it really has come back to when that began. But I suppose with what I'm doing now, I'd have to reflect on what I like to say, the tales of two businesses. And the first one I started was a health, fitness and education company. I started out of my stinky garage with $200 worth of secondhand equipment. And over the next 17 years, I grew it. We changed premises 3 times as we got bigger and better. I hired an amazing group of staff. We won business awards across the country here in Australia, got voted as the president of our industry association. And yeah, we just built this amazing community. And so for 17 years later, I was able to sell that business for the terms and the price that I wanted, because I built this really resilient and successful organization in an extremely transient industry. To go with that, at the same time, I had what you would call now a side hustle. At the time, that expression didn't exist, but it was a not-for-profit, and I was working out of Vanuatu in my spare time, building education programs and girls empowerment programs. And we did that for 13 years. So we had a board of management and hundreds of volunteers across 3 countries. But unfortunately, on our final trip in 2015, we got mixed up in some local cultural conflict. And myself and the team that I was leading, the volunteers, we were victims of a violent crime, survivors of a violent crime. And that had a massively big impact on me personally. I mean, I suffered terribly with post-traumatic stress disorder, crippling insomnia, physical pain from the injuries, and a deep level of stress from the entire situation. And when I needed to step away from that business to have some time off to recover, it soon became apparent that I hadn't actually built that organization like I had in my day job one. And I hadn't built it to be resilient enough for the founder, you know, the owner, the face, me, being able to step away. And, you know, it was a terrible time, but as we know, out of tough times and adversity and challenges, great lessons are learned. And I think, you know, as much as I would never want to go through that again, what it has taught me that you need to build organizations from top down and bottom up. It's not just having resilient people within an organization that makes everything tick over nicely. There are so many different components to it. And I learned that the hard way. And so now it's really my privilege because I can go into organizations and it's like I have a backstage pass just to see the different kind of levels of resilience that they have on an organizational level, leadership level, and the professional level, to ensure that they can navigate through really stressful and uncertain times. I mean, times just like the ones we're all going through right now. So nice. That's a long story to your question. I'm sorry,
no,
but
no. That's fantastic. It's really great when I have the chance to speak to other speakers, and it's always about the story. It's the story that is typically like they've experienced in life, and they're able to share, and of that story, it creates it creates that inspiration to want to change, to become that resilient person within themselves. So I think that's a really cool story. You've been doing it for anyone that's been watching and listening, you've been doing it for over 20 years. So obviously things have changed. A lot of things have changed. Technology changed. The way of which society has changed as well. How do you what keeps you inspired with regards to kind of change your approach or look at things differently?
Well, a couple of things probably. I mean, I don't want to be left behind. You know, I love being in business. I love doing what I'm doing. I mean, just that the two things, the creation of programs and keynotes and webinars and whatever. I love that creative process that having a business allows you to tap right into. And I also love to see the transformation that those programs actually have on people, the impact that they make to people. So that fills me up, and I never want to not have that. You know, that is just gold. It just makes me get out of bed every morning because I love the opportunity for those two things. So it's really about, for me, what is going on. I surround myself with mentors. I'm in different mastermind groups. I'm forever tapping into the expert that I'm not an expert at everything, not a chart. So who are the experts in their field that I need to get a better understanding of that particular area? There's no point me trying to do it from scratch. That would be a stupid waste of my time. Let me surround myself and build teams that can do the really good things that I'm hopeless at, so I can do what I like to do and what I'm best at.
Nice. That actually reminds me of my conversation I had with Jack Robbins. It's about kind of stacking knowledge through time and going out there to actually learn your craft, being better at your craft and adjusting to it through time. So I think that's really cool. So thank you for sharing.
Well, I think, they say it takes you 10,000 hours to master any skill. Now, if I want to do video editing, and I'm doing a lot of videoing right now, but I am not going to spend 10,000 hours learning the process of doing good video editing. There is no chance in this entire universe that I would waste my time when I could be using 10,000 hours to do things that I'm much more stronger at. So that's a question I always ask myself. should I spend 10,000 hours mastering a skill, or is there somebody else out there who can do a better job?
Yeah, 100%. I think, I like to use the analogy of, I think Chris Rock, a comedian, used a funny joke with regards. It's like, hey, you can drive without hands, but is that a good idea? It's the same thing. Like I use that when I'm talking to my brothers and sisters. I'm like, I can do my taxes, but I rather just pay a tax like an accountant to do it, who's a professional.
Absolutely.
That's the expert.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah,
I totally get it. So jumping in, we're talking about resilience. You touched on it before, and I want to ask, and it's really fun to know about this as well. What is the characteristics when it comes to, resilience in people?
Yeah, well, there are 4 things that influence how resilient somebody's going to be. The first one is our nature, the DNA that we've received from our parents that will influence how resilient we're going to be. It influences many things, of course, whether we like it or not. Then there's the nature versus nurture thing, how we're brought up. What our support networks are right now, what our socio-economic circumstances are. These all impact our levels of resilience. Then there are the events that happen to us. And I suppose this is one that most people think has the greatest impact on our level of resilience, whether it has been something from our childhood, whether it's gone over a long period of time, whether it's been those big, I call them cannonballs that hit you in life and knock you over. Those events do, of course, chip away at our resilience. There is no doubt. But in fact, the component that impacts our resilience the most is the way we think about those events. And I'm sure you would know people, Andrew, that they have gone through exactly the same situation, yet they've had an extremely different response from it. And this is, the way that we control our thoughts and manage our mindset and how we think about what has happened to us is really the defining factor on how resilient we can be to those events.
Nice. So it's those key moments in life, I guess, and those experiences that enable us, that teaches us, gives us that learning to become resilient.
Yeah, I mean, each time we kind of come out of a challenging time, we like building our resilience muscle a little bit more. But it's, out of that challenging time, I like to say that you either are the boss of your thoughts or you're the slave to your thoughts. So, who do you want to be? And how do you manage that? I go through a whole process on how to flip your thoughts from being kind of you being a slave to them to being the boss of them. And for example, when something does happen to us, how do we think about it? I mean, is it a curveball or is it a cannonball? Like, how do we place that event in our life? And, I talk about curveballs and cannonballs quite a bit because being able to distinguish between them is really important. And those curveballs that we all have to go through, it seems, in life, they definitely knock us off track a little bit. But it's the cannonballs that are the ones that really can knock us to our knees. And we have to fight really hard to get back up from them. So, when we're the boss of our thoughts, we can acknowledge the fact that something is either a curveball or a cannonball. Some people say making a mountain out of a molehill, same kind of thing. So just being able to manage how you perceive things is really important.
Nice. Okay, cool. And I think that probably might lead into this next question I have, which is around like adoption. So how can people adopt some of the behaviors to become resilient?
Yeah, well, look, I think one of the things that this kind of curveball and cannonball situation is that it's out of your control. We don't have any control over the things that happen to us, really. I mean, a little bit, but not a lot. I mean, no one could have controlled COVID-19. Like, none of us had any control over that. And that is impacting us all in a massive way. So when we don't have control of those events, what are the things that we do have control of? My favorite saying in the world is, if it's going to be, it's up to me. And I just think when you can apply that to your life and find the things that you do have control over, and really make sure that you're doing the work to improve the situation around things you have control of. So now I'm talking to people a lot about, because there's such people are, their days are so like they've never been in their lifetimes. They're doing Zoom calls out of cupboards because that's the only way they can get some peace and quiet, no distraction. And they've got flatmates and family members and fur babies all around them, and it's really tricky. They don't have a lot of control over how their day looks anymore. They don't get to go to the office and tap into their normal kind of structure. So we're talking about structuring self-care sanctuaries at the beginning of the day and the end of the day, because that's something you actually do have some control over. What you do when you get up to ensure that you're not in this cycle of stress all day long, and the things that you can do at night time to make this buffer between your work day and your rejuvenation time, which is sleep, so that you can actually wake up and be productive and creative and optimistic and be a great leader the next day. So it's finding those things that you can have control over, and those morning and evening rituals, whatever you like to call them, habits, I call them self-care sanctuaries, are something we do have control over. So let's do what we can with those.
Yeah, nice. And do you find with those self-care sanctuaries, it's almost like preparation? Like, sometimes as a leader, things are going to happen. It's either documented through life, through history, and so you look at ways to prepare. Hello? Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, it's all about the preparation, because it is in that kind of ritual, in that habit, in that particular amount of time that you are preparing your day, or preparing your week, your month, your year, your life. All of that kind of starts with how you start that moment in the day.
Yeah, nice. Moving along, I love when I was doing some research on you and your profile, you talked about the fundamental differences with regards to workplace resilience, leadership resilience, and professional resilience. Just for those who are interested, who are watching, who are listening, what are the kind of fundamental differences between those three?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, well, when I talk about professional resilience, I talk about that whole piece around what we have control over. What we have control over in our day to ensure that we can maximize what we're doing. And those rituals at the beginning and the end of the day are a great example of doing something that will set you up for success during the day. When I talk about leadership resilience, that's more around what you can do as a leader to ensure that everybody in your team can do their best work. So how can you set yourself up as a really great leader and be resilient enough? Because, I don't often like to use this analogy because it's so overused, but they talk about, when you're on the plane and it's going down, make sure you put the oxygen mask on yourself first. Even if you've got a child or someone you love next to you who's struggling, you've got to put it there. And when I'm talking to leaders about their resilience, we look at 4 different parts of that. Firstly, it is about leading by example, walking your talk, doing what you say you do. It's listening intently, like being really present and listening to the challenges and concerns of the people in your team. Being fallible, don't try to be a know-it-all and make out that you know all the answers, especially in a time like right now when none of us can predict what's going to unfold. It's okay to say, I don't know, but let's work through this together. And also to be service to others. You know, what can you do to lend a hand to people who perhaps are struggling right now? So those types of leadership traits really allow for not only you as a person to step up into being a great leader, but it allows for your team to build their resilience because of the way you're leading. The final part of that, the workplace resilience, is setting an organization that allows for all that to happen. I mean, I think about when I used to get called into organizations to do face-to-face workshops for teams. I mean, I do them this way now. And it's like, oh, we want you to come in and build the resilience of our people. And I have this little question going on in my head. Well, what are you doing within the organization that means that they've got to be more resilient? You know, what are you doing to them? So we look at, you know, do they have realistic KPIs for people to meet? What is their training and development calendar like? How are people rewarded and recognized? You know, all these things helps to build a resilient organization. And I think right now, when we've all had to shift the way we do everything, it's an amazing opportunity for organizations to really put their people before profits, because they can see how important they are and put things in place to ensure that the entire organization can be resilient to the curveballs and the cannonballs that are so unexpected, like coronavirus.
Yeah, coronavirus has done so much. It's changed the way of which businesses operate nowadays, and it's. I mean, it's, you can, you know, if there's a silver lining in all this, it to me anyway, coming from a startup perspective, coming from a digital perspective, it means that a lot of businesses are having to become resilient in how they operate, and part of that resilience as well is not only like self-care and leadership, and how do we operate within, like, how do we galvanize the people within our teams to operate better, but also what are other ideas? How do we pivot the business so that we're still operational, we're still adding value to the society, and still being relevant within society as well?
Absolutely, because the relevance piece has changed completely. What we thought was relevant that we were doing a couple of months ago is really different now. So, you know, we have to keep moving forward and finding ways to be relevant.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking about, like, you know, moving forward as a business, it kind of leads on to my other question around, like, you know, optimizing like business performance. So I guess the question is like, how can businesses, whether or not they're large or small, you know, gear themselves or position themselves to optimize, you know, for better business performance?
Yeah, well, it's something we all have to do no matter what size we are, right? If we're a solopreneur or have a small team or a large organization, we need to be able to move forward right now. And I've always loved the keep, stop, start method. You know, what do I have to keep doing right now that I know is serving me well, that has already brought some success to what I'm doing, has already ensured that I can reach my potential? You know, what is that one thing that I know has worked for me and my specific life and my specific business? So identify that and keep doing it no matter what, because I think especially as entrepreneurs, we're always looking for the next thing and we forget about what's actually working right now. So make sure you keep doing that one thing. Then what are the things that we need to stop? You know, we all know what things that we have in our lives that do not serve us well, that do not allow us to be the best business people we can be. So whether that is, you know, constant distraction on social media, that we're not putting boundaries about when we go to it, whether it is, you know, not doing that really one important thing for your day first before everything else topples over. Whatever it is, you know, you're not mastering, stop it, you know, stop not doing it and put it to the side. Or it could just be staying up really late at night and, you know, just getting down rabbit holes on YouTube or whatever it might be. Just name that one thing you know is not serving you well to keep your business thriving. And then the final part is, you know, what are you going to start? You know, what are you going to start doing that you're not already doing that you know you should implement? Now, that might be in this world that you need to put together a series of videos explaining what you do better, that you've now shifted. So who are you now, and how are you going to be able to serve the world better? Like, what is that one thing that you know you need to start? Don't get stuck, because it's very easy to get stuck right now because what you've always done and been doing isn't working. Don't get stuck. Just start one thing.
With that in mind, like, you've mentioned a few things like the cannonball, keep, stop, start, bring like perspective back into how we operate, how we become resilient. Is there anything that you might want to recommend, either like exercises or even reading certain novels or books around becoming resilient, if they had to take away a couple of things from today's kind of conversation?
Yeah, look, there is something that I'd love to share. I call it my strong bucket formula, because I talk about, resilience is like a bucket. When life's good, your bucket's strong and sturdy. But when life gets a little wobbly, you get holes in your bucket and you start losing all your strengths and capabilities. So what can we do right now to ensure that we keep our buckets really strong and sturdy? And it starts with actually understanding how the current situation is impacting us. Like all KPIs, it's really important to know our starting score, and I'm more than happy to share. I've got a little 3-minute quiz that people can do online to get their starting score, resilience score, because once you know where you are right now, that's when we can put things in place to improve that. So it doesn't matter if that score's fantastic or if it's right down here. Let's put some things in place. And I say there are 4 things that you can put in place to improve your resilience score. The first one is sometime every day to be still. Just to embrace silence and stillness without distraction. Turn off the phones, sit under a tree, listen to nature, whatever it is, but just be still. Give your brain an opportunity to reboot itself, because that really helps to boost your resilience. There is no doubt about it. The second one is to find joy. It is very easy right now just to be caught up in a lot of the despair and the challenges and the terrible statistics from across our globe. But finding some joy in your day, something that makes you smile or laugh out loud, that will just help you feel so much better and give you the capability to tackle tough things. The third one is to chill out. And I know that we've had a whole heap of, a big range in the spectrum of people who are doing a huge amount of chilling out because they've lost jobs or their roles, or they're just over it. It's like, I'm checking out until this is done. Right through to the people who are just scrambling, trying to like reimagine their business and keep their staff and redo processes. But I think when we're talking to that group, we need to remember that our brain and body does need a break at times. So we do need to chill out, have a sleep in, stay in your gym jams, immerse yourself in a good book, watch Netflix till the cows come home, whatever it is. And the final one is to live life. This too will pass. And although we are a little stuck right now, I mean, certainly no one's traveling overseas, but here in Australia, we are starting to loosen things up. And it's often in the planning of those really great parts of our life, which used to be travel, and whether that is, just to the next suburb to do something a little different, or into your CBD to go to a gallery or see a show, or, drink a cocktail in a swanky wine bar. Often it is the planning of that that really does fill us up and makes us feel like we're living life. So perhaps find that one thing that you know that you will do once restrictions lift. Here in Australia, we had all our regional areas decimated bushfires earlier in the year. So I've been talking to people to, pick one of the regional towns and start looking into that. Where are you going to stay? What are you going to do when you go there? How are you going to get there? Because it's in the planning that it makes us feel like we are really living life.
Nicely.
So they're my 4.
Nicely put. Thank you so much. And For anyone who wants to reach out to you, what's the best channels to reach out to you?
Well, my website is heididening.com, HeidiDening, one N, not two. And my social media handles are all the same, Heidi Dening. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, mostly, out of all of them. So that's probably the best way to see anything that I'm doing and connect. But yeah, please reach out. Let's have a chat. I'd love to know how you are going right now with your resilience in this incredibly stressful and uncertain time.
Nicely put. Thank you so much, Heidi. And for anyone who's watching or listening, I'll put all the details in the show notes and description below, so all is good. So thank you, Heidi. Everyone who's listening and watching, I hope you guys having a great day or week ahead, wherever you're watching, whenever you're watching, and I will see you on the next show.